She had worked in the mansion for several years, quietly going about her daily chores. No one paid much attention to her. She cleaned the rooms, washed the dishes, and made sure everything ran smoothly. The millionaire who owned the house was strict and busy all the time. He cared about work, money, and the image of his home, but he rarely noticed the little things or the people who worked behind the scenes. The maid had always been careful to stay out of trouble. She knew the rules. She knew when to speak and when to remain quiet. But there was one part of her life in the mansion that no one could see, a secret she held close to her heart. The millionaire's young son, born blind, had a deep love for music. Despite his disability, he could feel the world through sounds. The maid had discovered early on that the boy had a natural talent for the piano. His small fingers moved on the keys with surprising confidence, and his memory for melodies was remarkable. At first, she had hesitated. Teaching the son was risky. What if the millionaire found out? What if he thought she was overstepping her place in the household? She had seen him fire people before, sometimes for the smallest mistakes. But she could not ignore the boy's desire to learn. She wanted him to experience the joy of music, to feel the beauty that so many take for granted. Quietly in the music room, she began to teach him, every afternoon. After her chores were done and the house had grown calm, she would guide the boy's fingers over the keys. She taught him scales, simple tunes, and later more complex melodies. She would hum along softly, letting him feel the rhythm. She watched him grow more confident, more expressive. She saw how his face lit up when he played a song perfectly, and how music seemed to open a world for him that darkness could not touch. The maid never asked for recognition. She never told anyone what she was doing. She simply wanted the boy to learn and to enjoy the magic of music. Sometimes, late at night, she would sit by the window and think about how fragile their situation was. One wrong step, one careless word, and everything could be lost. She could be dismissed, sent away, or even blamed for something she had not done. And yet, she continued, driven by a quiet sense of purpose. The boy, oblivious to the risks, grew more skilled every day. He laughed when he hit a wrong note and beamed when he got it right. His trust in the maid was absolute. To him, she was not just a helper in the house. She was a guide, a teacher, and a friend. She, in turn, found joy in seeing his progress. There was a connection between them that went beyond words, a shared love for music that neither could explain. Yet both felt deeply. As the weeks passed, the mansion seemed to echo with soft melodies. The sound of the piano filled rooms that were otherwise cold and empty. Yet the millionaire remained unaware. He was too busy with meetings, phone calls, and his work empire. The maid's secret lessons continued in silence, hidden behind closed doors, like a tiny miracle no one else knew about, but she could feel it, an undercurrent of tension in the house. Sometimes she would hear the millionaire's footsteps approaching and freeze, heart pounding. Every time he passed by, she worried he might discover her secret. She told herself to stay calm, to be careful, to hope that he would never find out. But deep down, she knew it was only a matter of time. Even so, she could not stop. The boy needed her. He had a spark, a gift that deserved to be nurtured. She believed that music could give him a voice, a way to express himself when the world seemed unkind. Every note she taught him, every chord they practiced together, was an act of courage. She reminded herself that sometimes helping someone could mean taking a risk. And this was a risk worth taking. The mansion, with its polished floors and grand furniture, had never felt warmer than in those quiet afternoons in the music room. The maid felt a sense of purpose she had never known before. She was not just cleaning, cooking, or serving. She was shaping a future, nurturing a talent, and quietly changing a life. And though she worried about what might happen if the millionaire discovered her secret, she also hoped that one day he might understand. The boy's laughter and the music became the soundtrack of her days. Each lesson, each small success, reminded her why she kept going. Even if no one ever noticed, even if she remained invisible in the household, she knew that the bond they shared was real and powerful. And in the back of her mind, a quiet hope lingered. Maybe, just maybe, The millionaire would see the beauty she had helped create before it was too late. One afternoon, the mansion was quieter than usual. The millionaire had gone out for a meeting, and the staff were busy in their usual routines. The maid was in the music room, patiently guiding the boy's fingers over the piano keys. He was practicing a piece she had been teaching him for several weeks, and she could see how much he had improved. Every note he played seemed to carry not just sound but emotion, as if the music were telling a story that words could never capture. Suddenly, she heard footsteps approaching. Her heart skipped a beat. She froze, unsure if she should continue or stop immediately. The footsteps were slow, deliberate, and unmistakably familiar. It was the millionaire. He had returned earlier than expected. Panic surged through her. What if he saw her teaching the boy? What if he misunderstood her intentions? She had been careful all these years, but now she felt exposed. Like a secret she had tried so hard to protect might be discovered in a single moment. The boy sensed her tension and looked up at her with wide, trusting eyes. "Will he be angry?" he whispered. His small hand hesitated on the keys. The maid shook her head gently, trying to reassure him. "No," she said softly. "Just play. Nothing bad will happen." But even as she said it, she could feel the fear curling in her stomach. The millionaire entered the music room quietly, and for a moment no one spoke. He had been expecting silence, perhaps an empty room, but instead he heard music. The sound was so beautiful, so pure, that it stopped him in his tracks. He looked around and saw the boy, fully focused, playing with skill and confidence far beyond his years. The maid's hand guided him gently over the keys, but the talent, the expression, the depth, it all belonged to the boy. He stood there silently, unsure what to do. Every note seemed to pull at something deep inside him. He had never realized that his son could play like this. All he had seen before were small attempts at music, simple lessons that seemed to end in frustration. But now, here was a scene he could not ignore. His son was creating something extraordinary, and it was happening right in front of him, quietly, without fanfare. The maid noticed him standing in the doorway. Her heart raced even faster. She could feel his eyes on her, and for a moment she feared the worst. She opened her mouth to explain, to apologize, but the millionaire did not speak. He just stood there, watching, and something in his expression shifted. Curiosity replaced the initial surprise. He wanted to understand what he was seeing. The boy played on, oblivious to the tension in the room. Every note flowed naturally from him, and the maid continued to guide him with care. She could see the millionaire's posture change slightly. He leaned forward, his eyes narrowing not in anger, but in concentration. The music seemed to hold him, as if it were a bridge connecting him to a world he had never fully noticed before. Finally, the piece came to an end. The room fell silent except for the soft echo of the last note. The boy's small chest rose and fell with excitement and relief. He looked up at the maid, expecting praise. "Did I do okay?" he asked, his voice hopeful. She smiled, giving him an encouraging nod. "You did wonderfully," she said, pride in her voice. The millionaire remained silent. He had not moved, not spoken a word, but the change in the room was palpable. He felt something he had never felt before: pride, amazement, and a touch of humility. He realized, perhaps for the first time, that there were things in his household, in his own home, that he had been blind to. The talent, the care, the dedication, it had been right in front of him all along. Yet he had never noticed. The maid gently stepped back, giving the boy a moment to breathe. She wanted to explain, to tell the truth, but she feared that any words might make the situation worse. Instead, she waited, silently hoping the millionaire would understand the intentions behind her actions. Then, in a voice that was soft but steady, he finally spoke. "Who taught him?" His question was simple, but it carried weight. It was a question filled with curiosity, disbelief, and a hint of admiration. The maid swallowed hard, her heart hammering in her chest. This was the moment she had feared for so long, yet she knew honesty was the only way forward. "I did," she admitted quietly. "I wanted him to learn. He has a gift, and I thought he deserved a chance to discover it." Her voice was calm, but inside, fear and hope battled for dominance. She did not know how he would react. She had imagined all kinds of scenarios, but this was the first time she was hearing his question aloud. The millionaire's eyes widened slightly. He did not speak immediately. He just stood there, absorbing her words, trying to understand. The silence in the room felt heavy, but it was not uncomfortable. It was the weight of realization, the moment when someone sees the truth and cannot ignore it. He looked at the boy, then at the maid, and finally at the piano. Something had shifted. The fear that had filled the maid's heart for years did not vanish completely, but it softened. She saw a flicker of something in his eyes, respect, awe, maybe even gratitude. For the first time, the walls she had built around her secret lessons seemed less intimidating. The boy, unaware of the tension, smiled at the millionaire. "Did you like it?" he asked innocently. The millionaire knelt slightly, bringing himself closer to the boy's level. "That was incredible," he said, his voice filled with genuine emotion. "I had no idea you could play like this." The boy beamed, and the maid felt a wave of relief. In that moment, the atmosphere in the mansion changed. The music had revealed something powerful, something beyond wealth, status, or rules. It had revealed dedication, care, and the quiet magic that happens when someone believes in another person. The maid had risked everything to give the boy a gift, and now, for the first time, it seemed that her efforts were being truly seen. The millionaire remained standing there, taking it all in. He had expected to find something ordinary, maybe even to be annoyed by her actions. Instead, he had discovered something extraordinary. He realized that talent, love, and commitment could exist in the most unexpected places, and that sometimes the people you least notice are the ones shaping the most important parts of your life. The maid exhaled quietly. She had survived the moment of fear. Her secret had been revealed, and though she did not know what would happen next, she felt a strange sense of peace. She had done the right thing, and that truth could not be taken away. The silence in the music room was heavy, but it was not the kind of silence that made people uncomfortable. It was a silence filled with understanding, tension, and unspoken emotions. The millionaire stood quietly, watching the boy and the maid. He was trying to process everything he had just witnessed. All those afternoons, all those lessons he never knew about. How had he missed it? How had someone right under his nose been teaching his son such an incredible skill? The maid's hands were still hovering near the piano, her heart pounding. She had admitted the truth, and now she could only wait. Every moment stretched, and she wondered if she had made a terrible mistake. What if he misunderstood her? What if all the years of loyal work, all the care she had shown, were suddenly not enough? The boy, sensing the tension, looked between the two adults. "Did I do something wrong?" he asked, his voice small but filled with innocence. The maid shook her head quickly, giving him a reassuring smile. "No, sweetheart," she said gently. "You did wonderfully. You should be proud of yourself." She turned her attention back to the millionaire, hoping he would see the truth in her eyes, that her only intention had been to help, to teach, to give his son a gift that could change his life. Finally, the millionaire spoke. His voice was calm but firm. "Why didn't you tell me before?" The question was simple, but it carried a mix of surprise, disbelief, and something else, something softer. Perhaps it was curiosity, perhaps even admiration. The maid swallowed hard, her throat dry. She had expected anger, maybe a scolding, but his question was not hostile. "I was afraid," she admitted quietly. "I didn't want to upset you. I didn't want you to think I was overstepping. I only wanted to help him, to make sure he could experience music and feel the joy it brings. I didn't do it for myself. I just wanted him to learn." Her voice trembled slightly, but she tried to keep it steady. The millionaire's eyes softened slightly as he looked at her. He could see the sincerity in her expression, the honesty in her words. He realized that she had not acted out of selfishness or disobedience. She had acted out of care, love, and a desire to nurture his son's talent. He felt a shift in his heart, a mixture of respect, surprise, and even a little guilt for never noticing before. He turned to his son, kneeling slightly to meet him at eye level. "Did she teach you all of this?" The boy nodded eagerly. "Yes. She helped me learn everything I know. She shows me the notes and teaches me how to feel the music. I love it." The boy's excitement was contagious, and the millionaire felt a lump in his throat. For so long he had focused on work, money, and rules, and yet here was his son, thriving in ways he had never imagined, all because of this quiet, patient maid. The millionaire looked back at the maid. "You risked a lot," he said, his voice soft but firm. "You could have lost your job, but you still did it. You trusted me and you trusted him, and you gave him something I couldn't even give." The maid felt her eyes sting. No one had ever spoken to her like this before, not with understanding, not with recognition of her efforts. She had been invisible for so long, and now, in a single moment, she felt seen. The boy reached out and held the maid's hand. "Thank you for teaching me," he said simply. His words were small, but they carried more weight than any reward or praise. The millionaire watched them, realizing that the maid's dedication had opened a door he had never noticed before. She had shown patience, kindness, and courage, qualities that could not be taught, only lived. The millionaire took a deep breath. "I should have noticed this sooner," he admitted. "I should have seen your efforts, your dedication, and your care. I underestimated you, and I didn't realize how important your work with him has been." He paused, as if weighing his next words carefully. "I was ready to be angry, maybe even to punish you, but now I see that I would have been completely wrong. What you've done, it's remarkable." The maid felt a wave of relief wash over her. The fear that had gripped her for so long began to fade. She had worried for months, maybe even years, that her secret lessons would lead to disaster, but now it seemed that her courage had been recognized. She had risked everything to give the boy a gift, and in return, she had received understanding and respect. The millionaire's eyes softened as he looked at his son and then back at her. "You've taught him more than just music," he said quietly. "You've taught him patience, dedication, and confidence. You've given him something I can never give, and for that I am grateful." His words hung in the room, heavy with sincerity. The maid felt tears prick at her eyes, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming sense of being truly appreciated for the first time. For the first time, she allowed herself to relax completely. The tension that had been a constant companion for years seemed to dissolve. She looked at the boy, smiling, and he grinned back at her, proud of what they had accomplished together. The music room, once just a place of secret lessons, now felt like a space of trust, understanding, and connection. The millionaire finally smiled, a rare and genuine expression. "I don't know what to say," he admitted. "I'm surprised, amazed, and I think I am a little ashamed for not noticing sooner. But I am glad you stayed, and I am glad you taught him. He is lucky to have you." The maid nodded quietly, feeling warmth in her chest. She had never expected praise or recognition, but these words meant more than anything she could have imagined. That day marked a turning point in the mansion. The dynamic had changed, not through anger or punishment, but through honesty, courage, and the power of music. The maid had faced her greatest fear, and in doing so she had opened the hearts of both father and son. The bond between them all had grown stronger, built on trust, care, and a shared love for something greater than themselves. The boy ran his fingers over the piano keys again, this time without guidance, playing a simple melody he had learned. The millionaire listened, completely absorbed. The maid watched, her heart swelling with quiet pride. She had taken a risk, and now she could see the result: a boy learning, a father understanding, and her own place finally acknowledged. In that moment, nothing else in the mansion mattered. Work, rules, and status seemed insignificant compared to the connection they shared. Music had revealed truth, patience had revealed courage, and kindness had revealed value. The maid realized that her actions had done more than teach a child to play the piano. They had changed the way a family saw each other, and perhaps even the way they saw the world. After that day, the mansion felt different. The atmosphere had changed, not with grand speeches or dramatic announcements, but with quiet understanding. The millionaire had seen something he had never noticed before: the care, the patience, and the dedication of the maid. He realized that her quiet presence in the house was more than just helpful. It was transformative. She had given his son something he could never have received from tutors or expensive lessons. She had given him belief in himself, confidence, and the love of music. The boy's piano lessons continued. But now there was no fear, no secrecy. The millionaire allowed the maid to guide him openly. He watched sometimes, listening quietly from the doorway, amazed at the progress his son was making. The small hands on the keys produced music that was richer, more expressive, and filled with feeling. The millionaire noticed how the boy's personality had grown, how he carried himself with pride, and how music had become a language for him, a way to express what words could not. One afternoon, the millionaire asked the maid to play a song for him. She hesitated at first, unsure if she should, but he simply smiled and gestured toward the piano. She sat down, hands trembling slightly, and began to play. The notes filled the room, soft at first, then stronger, flowing with emotion. It was not just technical skill. It was heart, patience, and dedication coming to life. The millionaire listened, utterly captivated. For a moment, all the worries, the work, and the wealth seemed unimportant. All that mattered was the music, and the hands that had created it. He realized something important that day. The maid had done more than teach his son piano. She had shown him the power of patience, kindness, and quiet courage. She had taught his son to believe in himself, and in doing so, had changed the family in ways he could not have imagined. The millionaire felt a deep respect and gratitude for her, not as an employee but as someone who had shaped the life of his child. The boy noticed the change too. He looked at the maid and saw her smiling quietly, not for recognition, but for the joy of teaching. He understood in his own way how important her guidance had been, and for the first time he felt proud of himself in front of his father, who now listened and watched without judgment, only with admiration. From that day forward, the household operated with a new sense of harmony. The millionaire was more present, more patient, and more appreciative. He saw not just the work of the maid, but the care behind it. He began to trust her judgment in ways he never had before. He allowed her more responsibility and recognized her contributions openly. She was no longer invisible. She was valued, respected, and quietly celebrated for the difference she had made. The boy's love for music grew stronger. He began to perform small pieces for the family, each time showing more confidence. The millionaire attended every performance, sometimes recording the music, sometimes just listening in awe. He began to understand that success in life was not just about wealth or power. It was about the people who nurtured talent, cared for others, and believed in potential where no one else saw it. One evening, the millionaire invited a few close friends to the mansion. The boy was nervous but excited to play in front of an audience. The maid sat beside him, hands ready to guide, but confident he could do it alone. When the boy began to play, the music filled the grand hall, soft at first, then swelling with emotion. The friends were silent, captivated by the skill and feeling in each note. When the last note rang, there was a pause, and then applause filled the room. The boy's smile was radiant, and he looked at the maid with pride and gratitude. The millionaire approached her quietly after the performance. "You've given him more than I ever could," he said softly. "I can never thank you enough." She shook her head, smiling gently. "It's not about thanks," she replied. "It's about giving him a chance to feel the joy of music, to grow and express himself. That's all that matters." The story of the maid, the boy, and the millionaire became a quiet legend in their circles. It was not a story of fame or fortune, but of courage, dedication, and the power of believing in someone else. The maid continued to teach, the boy continued to play, and the millionaire continued to learn not just about music, but about patience, humility, and the unseen impact one person can have on another's life. Years later, the boy would look back on those early lessons with a sense of wonder. He remembered the afternoons in the quiet music room, the gentle guidance, and the soft encouragement. He knew that none of it would have been possible without her. And the millionaire, too, would never forget the lesson he learned, that true value lies not in wealth, but in care, love, and the courage to nurture what is hidden until the right moment. The maid, once nervous and uncertain, now smiled each day knowing that she had made a difference. She had taken a risk, faced her fears, and changed lives in a quiet, powerful way. And though she never sought recognition, she had found it in the most important place, the hearts of the boy and his father, the mansion. Once just a house filled with rules and work, had become a home filled with music, laughter, and respect. The boy played the piano freely, the millionaire listened with pride, and the maid continued her quiet, unwavering dedication. And through it all, one truth remained clear: courage, care, and belief in someone's potential can create miracles even in the most unexpected places.